MS Scandinavian Star. In the early hours of April 7, 1990, tragedy hit the Scandinavian Star. A fire broke out on Deck 3 while the ship was sailing, and it spread alarmingly fast. The ship's design didn't help. Fire doors weren't properly sealed, and a lot of the materials inside were highly flammable. To make things worse, toxic gases like carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide filled the air, turning the hallways into a suffocating maze. Passengers struggled to find their way through the thick smoke, and sadly, many were trapped in their cabins, overcome by the deadly fumes. The untrained crew struggled to communicate or guide passengers, which only added to the chaos that night. Out of the 492 people on board, 159 of them, most of them Norwegian, tragically lost their lives. Initially, investigators pointed the fingers at a Danish passenger, Erik Mørk Andersen, who had a history of arson. But as more evidence came to light, that conclusion started to fall apart. Investigators found signs of multiple fires breaking out across the ship, leading to suspicions of something much darker, a potential insurance fraud scheme involving the crew. Adding to the mystery, the ship had been insured for twice its value right before the fire, a detail that made the whole situation even more suspicious. RMS Olympic. The RMS Olympic was a British ocean liner and the first of the famous Olympic-class ships, which also included her sisters, Titanic and Britannic. She was launched in 1911 and went on to have an incredible 24-year career, far outlasting her more well-known siblings. Olympic was admired for her stylish design, luxurious features, and high-end engineering. For a time, she even held the title of the largest ocean liner in the world, until Titanic briefly took that honor, and later, Germany's Imperator claimed it in 1913. When she was on her fifth voyage, departing Southampton, England, bound for New York City, she collided with the HMS Hawke, a British warship built to ram and sink other vessels. This wasn't just any accident. It was a clash between a luxury ocean liner and a military ship designed for destruction. The Hawke's armor bow tore into Olympic, leaving two massive holes in her hull, one above the waterliner and one below it, and twisted her propeller shaft. Two of her watertight compartments flooded, and parts of the hull were pushed back by 8 feet. The damage was serious, yet Olympic refused to go down. Incredibly, she stayed afloat and even made her way back to Southampton under her own power. The Hawke, on the other hand, didn't come out of the collision nearly as well. Despite being a ship designed for combat, its bow was crushed and bent backward, and it almost capsized. People were amazed that Olympic had survived such a powerful blow, and this gave her a reputation as unsinkable. Sadly, that same reputation would later cause disbelief when her sister ship Titanic sank just months later. The aftermath of the crash wasn't easy for Olympic. Repairs kept her out of service for more than 2 months, and parts from the Titanic still being built had to be used to fix her, delaying Titanic's completion. RMS Carpathia. The RMS Carpathia was a passenger steamship operated by the Cunard Line, and it became famous for rescuing survivors from the RMS Titanic. Built in Wallsend, England, the Carpathia began service in 1903, carrying passengers on transatlantic routes between Liverpool and Boston before later focusing on Mediterranean routes. It wasn't the biggest or fastest ship, but it was designed to be comfortable and efficient, especially for immigrant and second-class travelers. On April 14, 1912, wireless operator Herald overheard the Titanic's distress signals and alerted Captain Rostron. The Carpathia raced through icy waters to reach the Titanic's location. Although they arrived 2 hours after the sinking, their crew rescued 705 survivors, offering blankets, food, and care. The rescue took over 4 hours, and the survivors were hailed as heroes in New York. Captain Rostron was awarded a knighthood and the U.S. Congressional Gold Medal. Sadly, the Carpathia's story ended during World War I on July 17, 1918. She was on her way from Liverpool to Boston as part of a convoy carrying 57 passengers and 166 crew members. To avoid German submarines, the ships were sailing in a zigzag pattern. However, earlier that morning, the convoy's escort ship left, leaving them exposed to attack. Being the largest ship in the group, Carpathia caught the attention of the German submarine U-55. At around 9:15 a.m., the first torpedo hit Carpathia's port side near the number 3 hatch, causing major damage. Things got worse moments later, when a second torpedo struck the engine room, killing 5 crew members and knocking out the engines. Carpathia began sinking at the front and tilting to one side. Captain William Prothero immediately ordered everyone to evacuate. The crew worked quickly, launching 11 lifeboats to get the 218 survivors, including all passengers and most crew, safely off the ship. Meanwhile, Captain Prothero and his officers stayed behind to destroy all important documents and make sure no one was left on board. While the lifeboats moved away, third torpedo hit Carpathia, sealing her fate. The explosion caused even more damage, and by 11 a.m., the ship sank beneath the waves about 120 miles west of Fastnet, Ireland. The survivors in lifeboats had another scare when the German submarine approached them, possibly to take prisoners. Thankfully, the British warship HMS Snowdrop arrived just in time, forcing the submarine to retreat. Snowdrop rescued everyone in the lifeboats and brought them safely back to Liverpool the next day. The loss of Carpathia was a blow, as she was the fifth Cunard liner sunk in just 5 weeks. However, the bravery of her crew during the attack saved nearly everyone on board. SS Edmund Fitzgerald. The sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald on November 10, 1975 is one of the most tragic and mysterious events in Great Lakes history. The ship, known for its size and strength, was carrying over 26,000 tons of tactonite pellets from Superior, Wisconsin to Detroit, Michigan, when it ran into a powerful storm on Lake Superior. The storm had hurricane-force winds and waves as high as 35 feet, making it a fierce challenge for the ship. As the storm worsened, Captain Ernest McSorley reported serious issues. The ship was leaning to one side, both radars were out, and it was taking on water. In his last radio message to a nearby ship, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, at 7:10 p.m., McSorley calmly said, "We're holding our own." But just minutes later, the Fitzgerald vanished from radar, and no distress signal was sent. All 29 crew members were lost. Days later, the wreckage was found, split into 2 huge parts resting 530 feet below the surface. The bow was upright, and the stem was upside down, with debris and tactonite scattered across the lake floor. The cause of the sinking is still debated. Some theories say that the ship's structure couldn't handle the stress of the waves. Others think rogue waves, known as the Three Sisters, struck the ship, or that leaking hatch covers allowed water to slowly sink it. There's also speculation that the ship may have hit a hidden rock near Caribou Island, which damaged its hull. SS Atlantic. The SS Atlantic was a sleek, iron-hulled ship 420 feet long and 41 feet wide. It has 4 masts for sailing and a single funnel for steam power. For its time, the ship was quite luxurious, with a fancy saloon for first-class passengers and space for over 1,000 steerage passengers. On its 19th voyage, the Atlantic was traveling from Liverpool to New York City. However, when the Captain James Williams realized the ship was running low on coal, he decided to head toward Halifax, Nova Scotia to refuel. This decision led to the ship's tragic sinking off the rocky coast of Nova Scotia. At the time, it was carrying 952 people on its 19th voyage and was hit by fierce winds and huge waves during its journey across the Atlantic. At 3:15 a.m., the lookout spotted dangerous rocks ahead. Despite trying to steer away, the ship crashed into the rocks, tearing open the hull. Water flooded the ship, and many people got trapped below deck. Distress rockets fired into the storm went unanswered. Some survivors held onto pieces of the wreckage or the ship's rigging, but most were lost to the sea. 2 crew members, John Speakman and Cornelius Brady, swam to shore with ropes and helped rescue many. Local fishermen also helped, but over 535 lives were lost, and only 1 child survived. Herald of Free Enterprise. The MS Herald of Free Enterprise was a modern roll-on, roll-off ferry built for the Townsend-Thoresen fleet. Designed with 8 decks, it facilitated rapid vehicle and passenger loading for competitive cross-channel routes. However, like many similar vessels of its time, it lacked watertight compartments, a critical vulnerability that would prove fatal. The ferry met a devastating end on the night of March 6, 1987, when it capsized shortly after leaving Zeebrugge, Belgium. The tragedy took place in mere minutes, claiming the lives of 193 passengers and crew. Designed for efficiency in vehicle and passenger loading, the 8-deck ferry lacked watertight compartments, a feature that would prove catastrophic. As the ship departed with her bow doors negligently left open, seawater flooded the vehicle deck, triggering the free surface effect, a phenomenon that rapidly destabilized the vessel. Within 90 seconds, the ship listed sharply to port and capsized, coming to rest in shallow waters. The power loss left the ship in darkness, compounding the chaos. Many passengers were trapped below deck, succumbing to hypothermia in the frigid waters. Despite swift action by nearby dredgers and rescue teams, including helicopters and Belgian Navy divers, the death toll remained staggering. Investigations revealed a troubling chain of negligence. The assistant boatswain, who was responsible for closing the bow doors, had fallen asleep. Supervisors failed to ensure the task was completed, and the ship departed without confirmation that the doors were secure. MTS Oceanos. The MTS Oceanos, a French-built ship from 1952. It was a small but elegant vessel, perfect for relaxing voyages. On August 3, 1991, the Oceanos set off from East London, South Africa, heading for Durban with 571 passengers and crew on board. But this journey would end in disaster. The ship ran into 40-knot winds and 9-meter-high waves, which caused serious mechanical problems. A poorly repaired ventilation pipe burst, letting in water that flooded the ship. By 9:30 p.m., the Oceanos lost power and started sinking. In a shocking turn, the captain and key crew members abandoned the ship without warning or helping the passengers. Despite that, rescue efforts were fast but not easy. South African helicopters quickly airlifted hundreds of passengers as the ship tilted dangerously. Local boats, including the Dutch cargo ship Nederland Mauritius, also helped with the rescue. The Oceanos sank bow first the next morning near Coffee Bay, and its final moments were captured on video. Amazingly, all 571 people on board survived. Afterward, it was clear there was serious negligence. Captain Yannis Avranas and 5 officers were convicted for abandoning the ship. SS Mont-Blanc. The SS Mont-Blanc, a French cargo steamship built in 1899, was an unassuming vessel carrying extraordinary volatile cargo during its final voyage. Laden with 2,300 tons of picric acid, 500 tons of TNT, 10 tons of gun cotton, and barrels of highly flammable benzol. The ship was en route to Bordeaux, France, after stopping in Halifax, Nova Scotia, to join a convoy across the Atlantic. On the morning of December 6, 1917, as the Monblanc navigated the narrows of Halifax Harbor, it collided with the SS Emo, a Norwegian relief ship. The low-speed collision ruptured barrels of benzol, spilling flammable vapors onto the deck. Sparks ignited the vapors, and the Monblanc was soon engulfed in flames. Despite the crew's warnings of imminent explosion, the fire drew crowds of onlookers in Halifax and Dartmouth. At 9:04 a.m., the ship exploded in a cataclysmic blast that obliterated the Monblanc, devastated the Richmond district of Halifax, and caused a shockwave felt miles away. The Halifax explosion killed approximately 2,000 people, injured 9,000, and destroyed over 1,600 buildings. The explosion was the largest human-made blast before nuclear weapons, leveling much of Halifax and sparking fires across the city. Investigations followed, with blame initially placed on the Montblanc's captain, pilot, and naval authorities for failing to avoid the collision. SS Arctic. The SS Arctic, a luxurious American paddle steamer owned by the Collins Line, was known for its speed and amazing visuals. On September 20, 1854, it left Liverpool for New York with over 400 passengers and crew, including families like that of the ship's owner, Edward Collins. It was September 27th when, while navigating the foggy waters near Newfoundland, the Arctic collided with the SS Vesta, a smaller French ship. At first, Captain James Luce thought the Arctic wasn't damaged and tried to help the Vesta, which appeared to be sinking. But soon, it was clear that the Arctic was badly damaged. Water started flooding in, and the ship became unstable because it didn't have watertight compartments. Captain Luce ordered the ship to head toward the nearest land, but the engines failed before they could reach safety. The lifeboats, which could only hold half of those on board, were launched, but chaos followed. Many of the crew and strong male passengers took the lifeboat spots, leaving women and children behind. Makeshift rafts were made, but many were lost when the ship sank 4 hours later. Out of the 400 people on board, only 88 survived, most of them crew members. Captain Luce went down with the ship, but later resurfaced, was among the survivors. Despite appearing badly damaged, the SS Vesta stayed afloat and reached Newfoundland safety. News of the disaster outraged the public, especially the abandonment of passengers. However, no official investigation was done and no one was held responsible. The Collins Line never recovered and shut down in 1858. SS Princess Sophia. The SS Princess Sophia was a steel passenger ship built for the Canadian Pacific Railway's coastal fleet, designed to travel the rugged west coast of Canada and Alaska. Launched in 1911, it was a sturdy ship with a double hull to handle the tough conditions of the Pacific Northwest. On October 23, 1918, it set sail from Skagway, Alaska, heading to Vancouver, British Columbia, with 364 passengers and crew, including families, miners, and workers on board. That night, in a snowstorm with strong winds, the ship went off course in Lynn Canal and struck Vanderbilt Reef, an underwater mountain. At first, the ship's hull held up, and Captain Leonard Locke and his crew were hopeful of a rescue. Several ships arrived to help, but bad weather and dangerous conditions on the reef made it impossible to evacuate. Captain Locke decided to wait for calmer weather, thinking that rushing to evacuate could lead to disaster, as it had in previous cases. On October 25th, the storm lifted the Princess Sophia off the reef, tearing open the hull. The ship sank quickly, and there was no time to evacuate. Sadly, everyone on board died except for a dog that swam to shore. The sinking became the deadliest maritime disaster in British Columbia in Alaska's history.